I want to welcome everybody to the Daily Cheat Sheet here with Golan,
Yo.
who is braving a cold that
Yeah,
he caught on the.
it's too many. People probably think I'm some kind of hypochondriac or that I'm weak. Got like weak blood. I was flying on a plane and some Russian woman sitting next to me, fat, hanging over the edge of the armrest, also sneezed the entire flight. So I thank God it's just a cold. And I don't have some kind of communicable disease.
I think we're gonna go start a GoFundMe for a
Private
hazmat.
jets. No, I don't want a hazmat. I want private jets. Go fund me private jets for Golan. Thank you.
I'm going for the hazmat suit. Anyway, I got a text from a friend of ours' daughter that I often reference on the show. She's 26 years old and extremely bright girl. And she was she was asking about the ICE with this 5-year-old kid, and then there's a few more coming out of the state of Minnesota that ICE has detained
Yeah.
has detained. There's no other way of saying it. And she was obviously disturbed by this image because all the news that she was getting on this came from legacy media, making ICE to be the bad guys, making them in this story sound horrific. Obviously, there was the picture of this kid, and then she went to Fox News where they actually explain the full extent of the story.
The story is the problem with the story is that it's ridiculous. And what I mean by that is we've been going through cycles over and over and over again in which people make these accusations. The accusations, whether they're against ICE, whether they're against Jews, whether they're against America, whether they're against Israel. We see that if the left has someone they want to target, they've got all the levers ready to yank and pull in order to make everybody echo that message, right? Echo the message to vilify a specific group or a specific person. And, it happened obviously with President Trump as well. And this is just yet another example of it. These lies, these fabrications, these exaggerations that occur that basically are all designed in order to vilify and put a target on the back of certain people. And they did it again here. They basically said, hey, everybody, some 5-year-old boy was arrested by ICE, was detained by ICE. Now, is that true? No. The DHS, Department of Homeland Security, they made it clear they didn't target a child. There was an abandoned kid, this kid that was abandoned by his father, someone they tried to give the kid back to his mother. The mother was like, no, thanks, I'm a terrible parent. And
they assured her they would not arrest her. I mean, by the way, here's the thing about this, Golan, for people to understand how sickly told this story is, that they assured her they wouldn't arrest her. It's not like if they knew she was illegal, they couldn't open the door and detain her. It's not like, well, I'm inside my home, ICE can't come in and get me. So this mother refused. This woman absolutely refused to take her. It's not like I'm behind I got into my house.
Right. It was, I'm throwing my kid under the bus. And by the way, when a child, let's just be clear, for all of you listening, use your brains for a moment, see if the story even makes sense the way they've reported it. Father, mother, they abandon their kid. A child is left unattended. Okay. So now what are they supposed to do? What are the responsibilities of the ICE agents? Do you think it is to throw this 5-year-old's arms behind his back, handcuff him, and chuck him into a cruiser? Or is it to make sure that the abandoned child was safe? According to all the evidence, they didn't handcuff him. They didn't interrogate him. They didn't use him as bait. They stayed with him because you don't abandon a 5-year-old on the sidewalk. And then the media just started using the word detain and made it sound like he was a target.
And
he was
bait.
temporary and bait, which is the most disgusting part of the whole thing.
Yeah,
he was temporarily taken into custody because there was no responsible adult present. That's called putting him outside of the street he was on into a safe environment. And that's it. It's basic child welfare protocol. The fact that this was spun into something disgusting is, first of all, it just shows you how much the media lies. It shows you how much the people who made these accusations lie. It shows you how you can't trust what's being spewed at you by these disgusting people. Why am I so angry about it? Not just because of this 5-year-old, because I've been watching it happen to countries that I love, to people that I love, to representatives that I love over and over and over again. we're just cool with it as a society, that people's lives can get destroyed, that countries can get vilified, that entire populations of people. I mean, I'm a Jew, guys. For those of you who don't, I'm not on video, wearing the Tzahal shirt, wearing the star around my neck, and behind me, you've got all the evidence you need. And I have seen the Jews been targeted in exactly the same way. And everyone's just cool with pretending these lies are real and then acting on the lies. It's dangerous, and this is the way societies fall.
Listen, I share in your anger, obviously, and the reason I brought it up, and I didn't even see this story, by the way, until my friend's daughter brought this up to me, is that she's on our side, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe she was.
She's on our side, but she.
Right. She heard it, and then she had to do her own investigating. Nobody's doing their own investigating. Nobody's looking at Fox News. So I brought up to you before the show, I hate ISIS messaging. I'm not a fan. Obviously, I love what, with Trump, what he did the other day, and that other suggestion that we made yesterday with papering the walls there of the press secretary room of the people they've caught. They've saved, I believe they found 120,000 kids. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong on that. Nobody's talking about the 120,000 children that have been saved. And here's the problem, right? When you notice in North Carolina, right, what made that story so bad, in particular, certain stories, was when they hid what happened to the Ukrainian woman, Irina, right? Is that they hid that story for essentially a week, and then they released that story, and we all saw the video. They should have obviously.
And if that video hadn't leaked out, we never would have heard about the story.
Right. So why did they do that? Because in the past they've controlled the media, they control the narrative, they control everything. So it gives them the ability. They thought, well, we could hold this and maybe it'll go out, maybe it won't, not realizing that it backfired. It didn't. It backfired. But my point is, the second I detain this family, and I know you might disagree with me a little bit on this, is they should have gotten out in front of the cameras and said, this is what happened in Minnesota today. We arrested this many people. This got caught up. This kid's mother abandoned him. Because set the narrative yourself. There are people on the street, Golan, taking pictures every time somebody is arrested, whether it's the 17-year-old kid, teenager.
I get what you're saying. And in theory, sure, I can say that it's a great idea to get out in front of the story, to tell everybody what happened. But now think about the sheer number of people they have to either detain or arrest or interrogate or question. Imagine the sheer number of operations they have to go through. Imagine if every single time something went awry, they had to stop, get in front of the cameras, and tell everybody what just happened, which would be spun anyway. And I'll tell you how we know this. And believed that Trump said there were good Nazis on both sides, right? He believed this thing the media had spun, but it was a televised speech that Donald Trump had made. Everybody could have watched it. It's still online. They could have watched it every single time it was reported incorrectly. Getting out in front of it, it wasn't even getting out in front of it. He said something in real life on camera where everyone could hear it. And they still were like, and now we spin it. Ask how many people believe the spin. You know the numbers. It's insane, the sheer number of liberals who still believe that.
You're 100% correct.
So now imagine if they came out and they were like, hey, want to let you know, this is what happened. The father abandoned, the mother abandoned. We took the kid into custody for his own safety. We did the humane thing. We didn't stick him in foster care or something like that. We took care of him. We wanted to see what was going on. And we tried to contextualize the situation to make sure everything was all right. Okay, now they say that out loud and they got ahead of it. What's the media story? Would it change even one word? They just said that, they're lying, and then they used them as bait. They're getting out in front of it in order to try and cover for their crimes. And that's it. We're in the exact same place, only now they wasted their breath. The idea that anybody, and when I say anybody, I mean the media in this case, that anybody would repeat a story that is unsubstantiated. By the way, the used as bait claim to this moment in time, because of course it's not true, but it's completely unsubstantiated. The body cam shows the opposite. There's no operational logic to it. It's just officials and activists repeating a phrase they know will explode on social media and it being amplified by the mainstream media. DHS has already said it's not true. and everyone repeated it anyway. And so who cares? And I think that if the media does, and I think there should be consequences for this. I know there are all sorts of laws that protect the media, and they can say, hey, we didn't know at the time, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, because of a court case.
Because of a court case. But I think there should be some kind of, and I don't know how to do it yet. I'll think about it. Maybe on a future episode, we can talk about the details of it. But I think there should be a law that says that if you knowingly print something, not that you know to be false, because you can't always know, but that is unsubstantiated, and you are making accusations that are unsubstantiated without having done due diligence, there should be a consequence for it. I don't know what it is yet, but I believe that should be out there.
Listen, I think that's perfectly said. But again, to your point, and this goes to what we discuss with what Men talks about all the time. We have to explain something for 10 minutes, or in this case, for days, that it takes them to the image to get out there in a split second.
So lies always move faster.
Right. So that's my only point. And what I'm trying to make is, if you know something has the potential to be a story, get ahead of that story. That's all I'm asking for. And I get what you're saying, but at the same time, nobody wants to be blindsided by this. So it helps people that have a voice and want to talk about this.
You know what? I have an idea. I have an alternative idea for what you're saying. Instead of getting out ahead of it and saying stuff, because first of all, you don't know what story is going to blow up, and you never know. And so going out there, you're giving them bait, you're giving them fuel. But what if every time something like that happens, there's just a protocol? Immediately send the body cam footage to the White House press room, And so the minute it comes up, without even having to be like, I'll investigate that, and I think there's an unsubstantiated, you just go like this, really? Play. And then right behind you,
that's my point. Okay,
it shows the footage as a response. It's an instant response.
There you have it. And lastly, on this subject, they were sent to like a correctional, like a family facility. Okay, they're not being sent to prison. Where they're living now, albeit they're going to have to go back to their home country, is probably far nicer and far better, and they'll get a better education at this correctional facility than they ever were getting at home or the Minneapolis school district. We could almost guarantee that. Want to move on a little bit. I have a really bad feeling that President Trump is getting, well, I don't have a bad feeling. I know that President Trump is getting some horrifically bad advice from, first of all, let's go to Tom Barrack, the ambassador to Qatar, the special envoy to, I guess, everywhere. He's the envoy in Syria, the envoy in Lebanon. That worked out amazingly well. He did a fantastic job there. And just so people understand, Tom Barrack, he was the envoy to Lebanon, and he said, give Hezbollah a chance to disarm. Israel, stop fighting. Like this, literally, I just want you to get into the mindset of who a guy like Tom Barrack and Witkoff think, because this is their thinking and this is their calculus. This isn't us saying it. This came from Tom Barrack's mouth, right? Am I wrong, Dolan, on anything I said?
You are absolutely right. And he has time and time again, just recently, I think yesterday, he was still tweeting out stuff that kind of defies logic and boggles the mind when it comes to the Middle East. And he's supposed to be the guy in the Middle East. He has so many things that he wants to put out there that actually are detrimental to the White House and detrimental, especially as we mentioned in our title, to Trump's foreign policy legacy. This is a guy who, just think of the pattern, okay? He uses this soft language towards Qatar. And I get, okay, what is he, the ambassador to Qatar? Is that right?
No, he's the ambassador to Turkey.
Ambassador to Turkey, excuse me. But he talks about Qatar, he deals with Qatar as well.
Special envoy.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. The special envoy to Qatar. He's using this soft language. So, hey, flowery, it's okay. He soft pedals everything while they're literally bankrolling terrorists and radicals. He keeps deferring to like regional stability, this concept of regional stability. And he's saying, hey, let's not rock the boat. Instead of getting decisive wins, instead of saying, let's actually make a difference here, he's one of the guys who, for instance, in Iran, when Trump was ready to do something about it, he's one of the guys that convinced him, hey, let's just see how this plays out. Let's see what happens. Now, there are other world leaders that also weighed in on that, but Barrack was one of the loudest voices. And hey, regional stability is more important than actually winning. this tolerance for ambiguity that he has throughout the Middle East, a place that you cannot have that kind of talent, that kind of tolerance. This is a guy who is constantly he is constantly edging towards weakness. He is constantly edging towards restraint without dominance and diplomacy without teeth. And it's something that I feel like Trump is listening to far too often.
Well, obviously, if he came out and said today at Davos that Giuliani is doing,
he said we're very happy with him.
Yeah, we're very happy with him as the Syrians are slaughtering the Kurds and raping women, and obviously they're probably raping men too. Let's be honest.
Under the leadership of Giuliani,
right? Under the leadership of Giuliani's. And here's the thing here's the problem, and we have to be honest about this, is if Joe Biden had these type of people in these places where they had real investments, real world investments, like Tom Barrack and Witkoff and even Kushner for that matter, we would all want them disqualified from those positions. We have to be honest about that. We would not want the people trying to broker peace to be brokering deals at the same time. It's an absolute conflict of interest. And just because you do business somewhere, as I brought up before, or you're from that region 80 years ago, it doesn't mean you know that region. And I will say this again: you could take the Al Qaeda. How did I say it? You could take the Al Qaeda. You could take the person out of Al Qaeda, but you can't take the Al Qaeda out of the person. Okay. These people are so far past the point, Golan, of having any serious negotiations. And Jared Kushner today at Davos is having this, PowerPoint. I didn't even know people do PowerPoints anymore, but he was doing a PowerPoint of how he sees Gaza, right? And it looked like the World's Fair, right? Like it looked like a modern day World's Fair of how he sees this happening. And I'm thinking to myself, dear Lord, man, what the hell? And this goes to what I always used to say. You could put the people in the worst neighborhoods in America and put them in Beverly Hills, and in 5 years, Beverly Hills will look like the worst place in America. And that's just a reality. You can't change the ideology, the philosophy. You can't, they don't want what we want. I'm sorry to just say.
That is 100% right. Just think, by the way, Judah's not kidding. For those of you listening, he was literally clicking through slides like your teacher did in 1994. Slides were called Redeveloping Gaza. And I'll tell you, that PowerPoint presentation or whatever the hell it was a perfect symbol of what's gone wrong with elite thinking about the Middle East. And the thing is, I don't think Kushner's evil. I think it's worse than that. I think on this front, Kushner is delusional, and I don't think he always has been. So something has changed, because when he was helping as one of the architects of the Abraham Accords, I think he had the right idea. I think he understood the execution. I think the assignment was clear to him. Here, something is off. Gaza is not vacant real estate opportunity stuff here. This is not a distressed asset that, like, real estate developers, like most of these guys that we're talking about who suddenly are diplomats, but they're really real estate guys, are going to go in and fix. This isn't like some urban renewal project or something like that. This is a radicalized, terror-soaked, weaponized society that has spent decades being turned into a jihadist factory, and where all they do is manufacture and execute on violence and hate and bigotry and death, period.
I mean, but to your point, I mean, just what you said, think about this. So he mapped out how Gaza is going to look in 3 years. And I say this to people, and I've told this to you about, with sobriety, right? When, being sober, and somebody calls me up and says, I'm having a really rough time, or my family's in shambles, or this or that. And I'm, whatever age they are, I always say, do you think 30 years is going to be repaired in a month that you're sober? Is he so delusional that he thinks hundreds or thousands of years of Islam is going to be de-radicalized because you built a Starbucks? Because
that's exactly what he thinks. Yeah. That's exactly. It's like if we rebuild it nice enough, everyone will just chill out. And this is nothing but Western narcissism. That's all it is. But it's not even that. It's elitist. It's elitist narcissism. It's the belief that economics automatically overrides ideology. You know how we know that's not true? Because there were a bunch of hostages that were in Gaza, and the Israeli government offered millions of dollars to any Gazan that helped with the return of a hostage. Millions of dollars. Do you know how many Gazans stepped forward to gather millions of dollars into their hands and return a hostage?
None.
Zero. Correct. Zero. And do you think they didn't know where the hostages were? We've heard from the hostages. They were being shuffled through neighborhoods where all of these people who were being offered millions were allowed to spit on them and hit them and sometimes rape them and whatever else they were doing. And they were being hidden in people's houses, civilian houses. And so we know that economics doesn't override ideology. It doesn't. It never has. Not in Gaza, not with Hamas, not with jihadist movements that explicitly value death over prosperity. Think about it this way. Think about if we had said, hey, we're going to go ahead and rebuild Germany, right? In 1943, nice housing, modern industry, foreign investment, all that stuff, right? But we'll leave Nazism intact and hope that prosperity moderates it. It's not optimism. It's insanity, right? You don't rebuild Germany without destroying Nazism. You don't rebuild Japan without crushing imperialism. You don't rebuild Gaza with jihadist ideology left untouched. And that's the only thing that's being proposed right now is we'll make it a carnival cruise, and all these people who literally live for one purpose. This life doesn't matter. They tell us all the time. All we want to do is send our children into the meat grinder to become martyrs and murder Jews and murder Americans and murder Westerners and make sure that the caliphate is everywhere. It's the only thing they care about. This life doesn't matter, remember? So who cares if it's a circus tent you're living in a life that doesn't matter? It is nonsense, and it is dangerous nonsense.
Perfectly said. And let's move on to the next Mensa member, which is Mr. Witkoff, who is in Moscow right now. I wouldn't mind if he stayed in Moscow. But another person with major, obviously, assets. The Qataris bailed him out. So another guy. And if I have to listen to him talk about Iran and diplomacy with Iran, dude, I mean, I don't even know what to say at that point. If you talk about diplomacy in Iran, you're just I mean, you're more than is it delusional, or you just, I mean, are you delusional? Are you an imbecile? What would you?
You might think that since look, I'm not making an accusation. Okay. I'm just pointing out some facts. Qatar bailed this guy out. He couldn't sell his building. Qatar came in, bought the thing, hundreds of millions of dollars, changed hands. And suddenly,
about 650 million.
That is correct.
Around that
650 million changed hands and saved his behind. And he is a real estate billionaire with zero diplomatic training other than having Qatar bail him out. Literally, look it up. So if you are going after
Iran, looks like he's going, I'm not kidding right now, who looks like he's always going to be an extra on Miami Vice.
He wishes he could hang with Crockett and Tubbs. My goodness.
I said an extra. I didn't say having a talking part.
Fair enough. Maybe, yeah, sorry, no. But really, think about it this way. If you're going after Iran, and Iran has one country that finances the jihadism that Iran is exporting and finances all of Iran's arms, like Hamas and Hezbollah, all of its allies and all of its tentacles. And they are the ones who saved the ass of the guy making decisions. And then he's like, hey, how about we don't attack? How about we talk it out? Again, I'm not making an accusation, but doesn't it seem like there is a very easy way to connect those dots? Again, just asking questions, as Tucker might say.
Listen, I think you're 100% correct. It's just, listen, if anybody in our lifetime of presidents has been with his gut 100% is always correct, it's been Trump. And the only times he's wrong is when he doesn't listen to his gut. And it was just like with COVID. He knew he should have gotten rid of Fauci. It was like, but remember, it was such a precarious time. Everybody always references the Saturday Night Massacre with Nixon. And he knew that certain things should be done, but he was under so much pressure. Right now, he's not under that pressure, and he's got to go back to listening to his gut. And because it's just, listen to your gut like you did with Cuba. So now they're talking about Cuba. There's, supposedly we're going to do regime change in Cuba. It's going to be what it's going to be. Fine. However you define regime change. But I would want to read you the news that just came out. European Union, the people that we protect, demands Board of Peace mandate be narrowed to focus just on guess who?
Is it going to be Gaza?
Ding, ding, ding. You win the prize.
Wow. As opposed to what? Did they say?
As opposed to, I guess, whatever the Board of Peace was created for.
Well, look, interestingly, so here's where I'll pretend I'm defending them, but I'm not. The Board of Peace was originally meant to be a Gaza thing. And then it expanded. Now, good, bad, or indifferent, it expanded. The countries that were coming in, they were each paying $1 billion to have a seat at the table. Trump even said some could come in without putting money down and have 3-year terms and all this other stuff. He had all these negotiations, but he was bringing a lot of people in. I don't love all the people he's bringing in, but he's bringing a bunch of different countries in. And there are rumblings that he is trying to supplant the UN, that he is trying to dismantle the UN by building a new organization, filling it with all the countries of the world that are willing to put money into it, and starting all over again. And then this is just rumors. So I'm not, usually we don't report the rumor, but you asked. So I'm telling you what the rumblings are, that it's a possibility he'll use this as an opportunity to dismantle the UN. Now, whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, I won't even get into, because again, it's rumor right now. But I think the EU is really afraid, because they see coming that they will not be able to rely on the same corruption that has existed for a very long time. And they're asking that this go back to just being the initial idea of its narrow focus on Gaza. The only thing that anyone wants to talk about, despite it being the most inconsequential thing in the world.
Yeah, listen, I agree, obviously, 100%. And if you are just tuning in, you are listening to the Daily Cheat Sheet. If you listen via audio, we do the show every day. We try to, at least at 1:30 Pacific time on Rumble. We get to read what people write in the rants, sort of like a talk writing radio. And greatly appreciate the people that follow us and listen and contribute. Listen, I'm looking forward, and I look at 2028, and I do put all my eggs in the Rubio basket. And again, I bring up yesterday, not to dwell on this, because I think people think I have this fixation with JD Vance, and it's not. I just notice things, and I'm sorry for noticing that Mike Pence was at Davos in 2018, and he convinced Trump to go. I'm sorry for noticing that he was there in 2020. And I'm sorry that I noticed that J.D. Vance was not in Davos yesterday, and that Rubio was, and it was being spoken of like he was the god of Secretary of States, which we both agree with. And because I don't think Trump, I mean, and I want to pose this question to everybody, really to everybody, and it's something we're going to post about later. And this isn't a knock, but does anybody really actually see J.D. Vance being able to take over Trump's foreign policy legacy? Does anybody? I mean, answer that question honestly. Can anybody honestly see J.D. Vance as being a foreign policy leader when none of these people want to speak to him? I get it. It's because they insulted all of them, and I'm happy about the way he did it. I love that he did that. But can anybody see them getting along?
I think the answer is obvious. First of all, the fact that he's not invited to the parties, and I mean this metaphorically. I mean, they've asked, think of every major thing that's happened over the past year. Just over the past year that Trump's been in office. We can name them, right? You're talking about the bombing of Iran. You're talking about, I mean, literally all of the different things that have happened over the course of the last year that Trump has had a hand in, whether it's the stopping of wars, whether it's taking out of terrorists, whatever. Rubio has been by his side for each one of them. He's either the one whispering in Trump's ear. He's the one that Trump is talking to before it happens. He's the one that gives the speech after it's over. He's the one that people are praising. When they went in and they got Maduro, not only did Rubio give a barn burner of a speech, but then afterwards it came out that he was one of the architects of the entire operation. And Vance, well, what was Vance doing? He wasn't there. He wasn't at the press conferences. I know they said, it's dangerous to have a president and a vice president in the same room at the same time. Yeah, that's never happened before, right? In the history. Wait, it's happened a bunch? I'm being told by my fake earpiece that it happens a bunch, and that's a bunch of BS. Well, I don't know why Vance isn't there, but once again, we're at Davos, where Trump is giving speeches that matter. A lot of people didn't like his speech. It's not about whether you liked it or not. It's whether it mattered or not, and whether the people that he was talking to mattered. These were all of the world leaders coming out of Europe and other places as well. And this is the place where Vance was absent. I think that it's very clear that he is not invited to the party. So to think that suddenly he is going to turn around and begin running the party, I'm sorry, it doesn't seem realistic to me now.
I'm just smiling because somebody in the rants, David, said he was busy getting his wife pregnant. And, congratulations, JD Vance, on what I think will be what it'll be his
Sure.
fourth, fourth or third or
fourth.
Okay, so they just
Kid.
announced,
Wait,
by the way.
but real quick, before you move on, I want to say one more thing about the Board of Peace, real quick, before we move on from it, because I want to point out the absurdity of something. Okay, I've been talking about absurd stuff all day, but it seems like the world's a little absurd, so it seems appropriate. Them asking, I'm talking about the EU in this case, asking that the peace focus be narrowed to Gaza only. It didn't occur to me till after I said the other thing, but also, even if they were only concerned about what was going on in Gaza, saying we only need to focus on Gaza is structurally insane. Because you can't pretend, you can't isolate it. You can't pretend it's just a leaky pipe. You fix the pipe and the whole thing's functional, right? Gaza isn't a standalone problem. It's one piece in a much larger puzzle of coordinated ideological, geopolitical issues. And the reason why Europe is sleepwalking into irrelevance is statements like this. Because if you think about it this way, Gaza is funded by Iran and Qatar, armed by Iran and Russia, trained by Iran and China, ideologically aligned with Iran and North Korea, politically protected by Iran's proxy network and Al Jazeera and everything else. Hamas doesn't wake up thinking, what does Gaza need today? They wake up saying, what is going to serve the regional jihadist strategy that is more than just Gaza? So if you are narrowing the peace lens to just Gaza while ignoring Iran and Hezbollah and the Houthis and Qatar and Turkey and UNRWA and everything else, it's, you know what? We're gonna treat your lung cancer by just focusing on your cough. It's so ideologically idiotic that it's nothing but a fiction. And by compartmentalizing it that way or requesting that it be compartmentalized that way, basically they're guaranteeing failure and they're guaranteeing irrelevance. So I just wanted to make that clear for everyone that's listening who are like, yeah, why can't they just focus on Gaza and have other things? Because Gaza isn't just the only problem. Gaza is a symptom of a larger problem. That problem is Islam and jihadism, period.
Listen, perfectly said. I don't think anybody could say it as well. Maybe Guy.
Guy, by the way, wrote a great article. Check out his Substack. Wrote a great article about how the delusion of this Gaza carnival cruise they're building, or that Kushner's trying to build, is exactly the environment. I'm going to try and quote him. Exactly the environment that led to October 7th. So check that out.
I thought he said he wrote that a while ago.
He wrote it a while ago, and it is relevant once again because it's not the first time this has come up.
Okay, that's yeah. So I'm gonna have to find that. I know where to find it since he sent me the link. But this just happened. We have many. This is from President Trump's. We have many ships on the way to Iran. There's an aircraft carrier on the way there. Let's see what will happen. We have a great force on the way there. I don't want anything to happen. We will have to see what happens.
How long ago did that statement come out?
Maybe 25 minutes ago.
Hadn't seen that one.
Yeah.
That's a great way. Can you? I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see what happens. That's a spectacular statement.
I don't want anything to happen, but we'll see what happens. And that's Trump. That's who I want being the foreign policy. That's getting back to everything. That's the Trump I want ruling the world. That's my Donald Trump. Okay, that nobody in Iran right now is sleeping if they got this message. But to the bigger point, this going back to the Board of Peace, see how quickly this crumbles. If we do launch an attack in Iran, this is the insane quagmire of all this stuff. It's just, when people think about it, Russia, Turkey, Qatar, all these nations, do you really think they're all going to get along? I mean, I get it. The United Nations is built on people not getting along, but these are like, you brought in all the people that have assets to not get along.
Right. And I'm just looking up the story here. I just love the statement. I hope hey, nice shop. I hope nothing happens to it. Kind of, again, you've heard me say it 1,000 times. Trump, half stand-up comedian, half mobster. And this is one of those beautiful mobster moments that I love out of him. It's classic Trump deterrence. It's pressure without stupidity. It's like it's just on the edge of like almost am I kidding? I don't know. I can't tell what's gonna happen. I can't even control it myself. I hope everything works out okay. Like, I really like this. So moving military assets is obviously the point here. Here's the thing. A lot of people saber rattle. A lot of people love to shout and say, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Iran, we got 10,000 kilometer missiles and all this other BS, right? That nobody can corroborate. You don't need to scream threats every 5 minutes. Trump's doing it like this. He slides his carrier strike group, his destroyers, his air power into position, and that's leverage. He's like, he understands something that the foreign policy morons never did. The loudest message is the one you don't have to explain. I'm putting my stuff in position. I hope nothing happens. It's up to you if it does. I like that. That's how I parent. And I think this is the smart move.
Yes. And Dr. Jen C in the chat says, are we going to have a show if that does happen? Immediately. We will be live streaming.
Oh, hell yeah.
100% of it happens. And again, listen, this makes you sound like again, we're not war hawks. I am not a war hawk. I believe in surgical strikes. I don't want our forces on the ground there in any way, just like I want a surgical strike against Jelani in Syria. But I mean, we really do have a bad picker oftentimes when it comes to picking who's next. And for people that aren't seeing the images, they're flying the ISIS flag in Syria. Okay, they're flying the ISIS flag in Syria. Remember, it was Trump that decimated ISIS, and now we're letting this cancer regrow. That's why we're talking about it. That's why it's so important. We brought up yesterday on the show the fact that Iran, they actually did do the test on that missile. Okay, so that wasn't like a fake, the broadcast. If this was actually a real message, Well, what would happen, by the way? Remember those things like, when you'd be turning on, you get what was it with the emergent message from the emergency broadcasting system? If this was
this
a thing,
is just the test. Yeah.
But what if it wasn't? Like what if it like nukes are on the way, tuck and roll or whatever.
Get under your desk, right? Yeah.
Like what would they never actually said really what would happen like if God forbid this
I think we figured it out because the movie Greenland cracked it. That's everybody. There's 14 people who won the lottery, and all the rest of you put your head between your knees and pray. Like that was it. I think that's basically what it would have said. By the way, the Warhawk label. I mean, I love whenever anyone. What's the other thing they call the Jews? What do they call them?
The neocons.
Yeah, neocons. Thank you. You knew immediately. Wow, it's not even dog whistle. Yeah, neocons, warhawks. It's the laziest label. Ultimately, deterrence prevents war. Weakness invites war. Right? Warhawks want war. We don't want that. We don't. We are supporting restraint with leverage. And if something is necessary, then it's necessary. And that's deterrence again, not bloodlust. Ultimately, if we don't, it's what does he always say? Peace through strength. That's not being a war hawk, you morons. That is supporting.
Well, that was Reagan,
the world.
Right? That was Reagan's favorite. That was the. I'm looking at something interesting. I love reading people that people watch a lot. And Steven Crowder, reason the media ignored Iran because covering it exposes an unstable Islamist regime and the world's top funder of terrorism, which wrecks their narrative that Israel is the sole human rights villain. It also proves Trump was right. Iran can't have a nuke, given it already wages, not according to Tucker Carlson, he's all for Iran having a nuke, but wages proxy wars against Israel and ultimately the U.S. So I'm agreeing with Louder and Crowder. Louder
with Crowder.
Louder with Crowder on this one. But he's right. It's if it doesn't involve the Jews or Israel, the media is not covering it. So
it's been interesting to listen to Crowder because he is not like an automatic pro-Jew guy.
He's not an ideologue.
He's not an ideologue at all. But specifically when it comes to the Jews, when it comes to, well, I'm not even going to say Israel. I'm just going to say the Jews because the conversations he's had with who's the little Rumpelstiltskin Nazi? What's his name?
Nick Fuentes.
Nick Fuentes, thank you. You see, isn't it amazing how good I am at descriptions? Rumpelstiltskin Nazi knew exactly what I was
guess that's
why
everybody said I'd be good at password.
And there you go. Brilliant. Oh, it's amazing. center square. So yeah, when he had Nick Fuentes on and was like agreeing with him about everything and then saying, I don't think he is really anti-Semitic. And I was like, you were like, whoa, wait a minute. Are you defending? And then he goes this other way. He's really pragmatic, which is weird to say about a guy like Steven Crowder. But sometimes I can't stand him. And sometimes I'm like, okay, you win this round on that point. This is one of those, you win this round on that point. He's absolutely right about what he's saying. It makes perfect sense.
By the way, there's nothing wrong with agreeing and disagreeing on certain points. Like we should have, we should have differing points on certain things. I was going back and forth with people, not in a bad way, on Truth Social, where we do. So, you could always get in contact with us on Truth Social, and trying to explain to them the conversation we were having yesterday about Israel and, the conscious uncoupling of foreign aid. And I think the difference we've always had on this show between men's whole point always has been, if you decouple, you take away a talking point. But both of us have never wanted the decoupling because,
for America's sake.
For America and Israel's sake, because it's it's that special relationship.
You're right.
And it's like, hey, we're helping each other out. We're doing all this stuff together. It should be honored and respected. And nobody's getting the shaft on this deal.
That's right.
And because you can't explain that anymore or talk like that anymore, and nobody's expressing that,
and nobody's listening if you do anyway.
Right. If you do anyways, then you have to decouple. And it's sad. I don't want to watch the decoupling. I love this special bond that we have. Hey, you do this, you do that. We'll use your spy agent, whatever it is. But you can't do that anymore because, well, you have the Tucker Carlsons of the world and the Matt Gaetz and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and everybody else who have poisoned this relationship to such a toxic level. There's no going back.
By lying about it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I will admit I have focused more on how America gets screwed if we do that and how Israel will be fine. It's many, many years ago. I was in school. I think this was high school, maybe even grade school. And I wrote an essay called "The World is Fine, the People Are Effed." It was actually a paper I wrote for school, which basically was a story about how it had to do with Earth Day. And I was like, why are we celebrating? The Earth is fine. Have People Day. We're the ones who are going to. You think the Earth isn't going to shake us off at some point? Like they have everything. The dinosaurs disappeared. Everybody disappeared. The Earth doesn't need our help. We need our help. Right. So anyway, it was a paper I wrote a long time ago. But that's how I feel about this, where I'm like, what does everyone go? You think Israel? Oh, get Israel off of our aid. Israel's going to be fine. The GDP of Israel dwarfs most countries. They have more technological advancement than almost any other place on earth, more inventors. They change the world every Tuesday. They literally, what's the problem? We don't have enough water. How about we create something that pulls water out of the air? Israel did that. Nobody else did. And the Iron Dome, America's like, it's impossible. And then Israel's like, here you go. It's done. So Israel will be fine. America loses out on all that technological sharing, all that intel sharing and everything else. So I usually go that route. But you're absolutely right. This is a relationship of values under fire. It's earned, it's tested, and it's rare. It's a special relationship. And it's not because of lobbyists, you lying asshats. And it's not because of aid packages or some cartoon conspiracy theory or whatever the hell they're whispering about online. It is because of what they share. It's the only country in the Middle East that was built from day one, on the same core principles that the U.S. claims its moral DNA. And that's why we share that relationship. You're right. It is bad for both because despite they can disagree, and they often do, loudly, constantly, messily. But guess what? People in America disagree. People in Israel disagree. That's how democracies work. It's okay to sometimes disagree. You still work together. And the minute you stop doing that, you have lost something. And what this tells me is not just that this relationship is in jeopardy, but that the very DNA that America was built on is in jeopardy. And that's scarier than anything.
Yeah, and you gave me chills as you said that. But as you were affirming what I had just said. But no, I'm serious.
You're brilliant. What can I say?
I look at it and I say, look, Nixon bailed out Israel, right? Went to DEFCON 3 to save Israel. They came up with the loan guarantee program, which with the help of Ben Stein's dad and Dick Schultz, I believe it was. I could be mistaken. And I want to say that was in 92. I could be mistaken about that too. But so check it out. And it didn't last a long time. But there was always that. And for people with a loan guarantee is basically if Israel needed a loan, America was the guarantor of that loan and they were never late on payments back. And that program no longer exists. It became simply the aid program. So I look at all the things America has done for Israel. And the reason I don't want that bond cracked is because I do want Israel to, in a sense, also pay back. I do think there's that thing of, okay, here's here's a lot of our intellectual property. Let's do the dome together where you want to do it in Greenland or wherever the hell you want to build a dome. I want that special relationship because it's meaningful. It symbolizes what we've done for each other, and I don't want that broken apart. But sadly, like I said, it's past the point of no return.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, look, the thing that linked these two countries together more than anything was moral clarity. And the minute morals are not as clear, I can see why there's friction. And we got to do something to repair this. We really, really do. I had a
yeah,
conversation, not to detour into something else, but I'll just say this. I had a conversation with someone in Israel who was very against religion. Very like I would go so far as to say he might quibble with this, but anti-religion. Doesn't let it into his house. He thinks it's just magical thinking, and he doesn't want any part of it. And he said, I think the world's a better place without it. And I said, so interesting, because my argument is the only thing that will save the world is like if Christianity, if the church becomes strong again in the United States and elsewhere. And he was like, "Oh, but look in Gaza. Look what religion did to them." I said, "Yeah, no, but you're not talking about a religion there. You're talking about a cult, and you have to be able to differentiate between them." And that idea that we are no longer like America is no longer considering itself a Christian nation is scary to me. That's one of the things that was one of the pillars
can
this
I
was
tell you
built
something? It's
on.
so interesting what you just said because you know how you don't know how stuff gets into your algorithms. So I recently rejoined Facebook after a long time off, and I'm not friends with a lot of people, friends with a few. And into my feed got this like how people got closer to like sobriety and how people got closer to God through Christianity. And I was watching this comic. Maybe his name was Jeff Owens or something. I don't know. Maybe it was somebody. It was this one comic, and he was talking about. It was like a 3 minute reel about how it saved his life, how religion saved his life. And I was watching this at like 9. I kept on wanting to go back to watch Supernatural. For I love that show. And but I
Funny,
kept
I
on
was just
getting.
today talking about Jensen Ackles, and Jared Padalecki. But it's another story. Continue.
But how cool would that be if everybody got into their algorithm? And it doesn't make me say I want to become a Christian. I'm a proud Jew, but it makes me realize religion does make you want to be spirituality. Religion done with
Yeah,
spirituality makes you want to become a better person. This guy wasn't proselytizing; he was just telling his story, and it was
yeah.
an extremely attractive thing. And we need to get back to that time where these people aren't scoffed at or mocked. We're giving your testimony, as one would say.
100%. I really think that when the church is strong, and I'm just going to use America as an example, but I think this is a worldwide thing. America specifically has something that no bureaucracy and no algorithm and no DEI committee can manufacture, and that has to do with a common language of right and wrong, right? Where responsibility and sacrifice and restraint and forgiveness and duty and all of this other stuff that comes from just feeling like there's something larger than yourself and that a community matters more than an individual. It's something that can't be faked. It's just a moral spine that can't be faked in any other way. I haven't found it anyway. Maybe something else exists out there. People have told me, you sound like a socialist because you're saying collective versus the individual. And it's like, obviously, it's not what I'm talking about. And if you think that you don't know what socialism or the church is all about, really look at how the church functions and think about how much better people are. And I'm not talking about corrupt organ. People always bring, oh, what about the corrupt church or what about the molesting young? Obviously, I'm not talking about the anomalies and the negative aspects. I'm talking about the thing that draws people together and makes people feel like they need to make the world a better place. That can't be faked elsewhere, as far as I can tell.
100%. And like Ben Shapiro said, go to churches. And obviously, he would tell Jews to go to synagogues and don't go to mosques. That's just coming from me. And don't go to the Church of Scientology. Go to churches and synagogues. And the last thing I want to bring up, though, because I think this is cool, is we've officially left the World Health Organization. It's about time. And I got to say, I give Bobby Kennedy Jr. an A+ for the last year. Doesn't mean I always agree with things of his, but I got to tell you, man, go on. Guy's a survivor. He took every knock a guy could possibly take. I'm really impressed with Bobby Kennedy Jr. I was the most skeptical going in. I'm not a fan of the Kennedy clan, but the fact that the Kennedy clan went after him gave me even more liking to Bobby Kennedy Jr. And yeah, so I'm quite happy.
Well, and by the way, on top of everything else that you're talking about, kind of interesting. Did you know? Some people know this. I don't know if you did, that the U.S. is the largest funder of the WHO?
I thought it was China.
Nope. The U.S., the largest funder. We bankrolled that thing, even as they were lying to people and they were obfuscating transparency and all the rest. We were still the largest funders.
I thought during COVID, China gave them like a $43 million infusion, but I could be mistaken.
Do you know how much the U.S. gave? I think the last, let's see, 2025 was, it was about $1 billion. No, excuse me. It was more. It was more than $1 billion. Hang on. I'm going to check something real quick. Hold on. Vamp for me for just a second.
You know,
that's not a vamp.
As I'm drinking my Diet Coke. I love how I tell the story, though. I love how I'm telling the story about watching on Facebook these reels that bring me closer to God and make me feel good. And David in the rants is talking about how he hates one of the characters from Supernatural. I love that's the takeaway he got.
As long as it's not the dad who's the coolest guy in the history of the world.
From me talking about God, but yeah.
There you go. Here it is. I'm going to read two things. The 2024 to 2025 period, the U.S., this is from a Health Policy Watch, the U.S. was expected to contribute roughly $750 million, with an additional $260.6 million in assessed dues, plus about $490 million in voluntary contributions committed under the previous administration. In 2022 to 2023, the U.S. contributed about $1.284 billion to the WHO. Wow, this includes both assessed, which is mandatory dues, and voluntary contributions to specific programs and initiatives. I'm sorry. That is an insane amount of money to give an organization as corrupt as the WHO. I always use the same story, but to me, it is the perfect story of the WHO. My wife is half Taiwanese, and Taiwan was working hard to try and figure stuff out about COVID. And this WHO official was being interviewed, and they asked, and what about all the advancements coming out of Taiwan? And because China was throwing so much money their way, and they didn't want to jeopardize their cashola that was coming in. I don't want to say payola, but that's what it was. They basically wouldn't mention the word Taiwan and wouldn't acknowledge the country of Taiwan. So when they were asked about Taiwan, the guy changed the subject. And then the interviewer said again, "Oh, wait, can we go back? I just asked you about Taiwan." And then he didn't know what to do. You could see panic in his eyes. And he said, "Yeah, I think we have a bad connection. I couldn't hear what you just said." And she, just recognizing what he was trying to do, just asked again. And he just ended the Zoom call that was being broadcast live to all the people who were trying to get information about COVID, who were scared out of their minds. He just ended the call instead of actually admitting that Taiwan existed because he was kowtowing to his Chinese overlords. That tells you everything you need to know about the WHO, right? Folding like cheap lawn furniture in front of China. And beyond that, they were parroting Beijing's talking points. They were dismissing whistleblowers. They were slow walking investigations, and they were lying to everybody. And who was affected? Ordinary people like you and me. And Judah had his stuff wiped offline because he questioned, whatever the WHO said.
I questioned. I'll never forget that. I'll just tell the story. We were doing an episode of The World According to Ben Stein, and I had come up with code to talk about the fake elections. So I would say, stealing jelly beans, right? And one night we did a show, and I was like, oh my God, I think I said the election was rigged. And it was a night where we had two people on that had gotten the vax and two people that didn't get the vax. And I just was asking a question of, it doesn't make sense if more people are getting the vax, why are more people getting COVID, right? Because we look at vaccines as, you get it. And we were told this in a sense, you get it and you won't get COVID anymore. I mean, we were pretty much told that. So
No, we were
we were,
explicitly told that. I
yeah,
could
we
pull up
weren't
quote
told it
after
was,
quote after quote.
we weren't told like it was like, a condom from like 1915. And, we were told that literally this will be, and I got a letter that night telling me from YouTube, we broke the science, something with science, and they pulled the episode. That was one of literally 100 episodes they pulled off of YouTube because of that, because we broke the science codes asking those types of questions. So listen, what are you going to do?
By the way, just for the fun of it, I decided to pull it up. This is a quote. If you're vaccinated, you're not going to be hospitalized. You're not going to be in the IC unit, and you're not going to die. And later he also said, you're not going to get COVID. Oh, here it is. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. These are quotes. So a lot of people said it, not least of which the president of the United States.
I just want to end with this because it's been on a personal level. They're investigating. I met him a couple times, and he was really a nice dude. They're investigating Jim Irsay, his death. The former owner of the Indianapolis Colts, because his doctor prescribed him. He was on ketamine, like over 200 opiates, and this was after everything with the opioid epidemic and all that stuff. And it's when I talk about sobriety and stuff like that, it's there's no, we shared the same therapist, and the therapist always used to say to me, you got to go up the mountain straight. In my life, I like to go sideways to get up, because anytime I hit a barrier goal on, it's like, let me take another 10-hour detour to get there instead of just, and, they're constantly trying to, you hear this on road, listen, with PTSD and the troops, try anything you want. But, and especially for the people on the streets, right? The mentally ill try a lot of stuff. But for your alcoholic or your drug addict, I only know one thing. And I know ketamine is not the cure for it. I know opioids are obviously not the cure for it. And I'm very happy. And I'm also very happy that Pam Bondi decided to arrest that person in Minnesota who said, come arrest me. One of the agitators. I'm very happy about that. And sorry to go from one story into the next, but like that. But I just feel like sometimes we have to give a PSA, and there's no way to cushion it if you want to get sober and live a better life. And sadly, Jim Irsay died, and he really did want to be sober. He was a person that tried to be sober, and he just wasn't blessed. He could not get it, and he just couldn't get it. So for all the doctors out there or anybody, I'll never forget there was a woman that started Moderation Management, and she killed. I think I know she killed people in a DUI, and she might have died herself. I'm not sure. But there is no such thing as moderation management with addiction and alcoholism. So that's my PSA.
Look, I will admit not to having a relationship with Jim Irsay personally. I don't mean one on one. I mean even within beyond the fact that I knew who he was. But I will say that whenever a high profile figure like him just kind of dies in a hotel room and a death certificate gets signed without an autopsy, I'm curious. As we talked about in other cases, it's always weird when the local police close something super quickly without anything that seems like
in Butler?
Like in Butler, exactly what I was thinking of, exactly. And so I feel like I'm okay with them going through a little bit of an exploratory process to figure out what happened here. But it's such a sad story, and it's a sad story not even just because of him, but if this doctor that you were mentioning really was prescribing like opioids and ketamine and all sorts of stuff like that. Feels like, remember the Matthew Perry story? It feels similar to that too. And every one of these, and look, maybe I'm wrong. I have never lived this life of addiction, and maybe these things would have happened anyway. But almost every time, these things are preventable. These are people that are trying to get out from under it. And it's because of these doctors who are not considering what to do. And again, I'm speaking out of school with very little knowledge. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels preventable. And that always is so sad.
Listen, by hook or by crook, an addict is going to get a drug if he wants to, but he doesn't need the help of a doctor sending him pills in California, Indianapolis, Miami, but by hook or by crook, he would have figured out a way to get high and die, sadly. But so I'm not one of these people. I'm not necessarily just blaming the doctor, but obviously doctors do have to be, they did take an oath, and we have run out of time. So I just wanted to say one more thing. If you're young listening to this show, you can make change. Okay. So when you read the stories and you find the counter stories, post them. Post those stories to your friends. Send them around. Get it into their algorithm. That's the only way the story or the narration, specifically with ICE, could change. Is if everybody is inquisitive, because a lot of people aren't, open up those stories. And it's like that. Who had that joke? It doesn't matter. I can't remember his name, so it doesn't matter. But get your friends into that algorithm. I don't know how I got into the algorithm where I'm getting the Jesus messages. I I don't mind. It's not a bad thing to go to bed to listening to stories of hope. I got to say that much.
I'm just
So
look. You mentioned a couple of stories that we're not going to get into the details of, but it's good for people to know. I'm going to throw out one more. Let people do their own research on it. But one of the convicted fraudsters in Minnesota, Amy Bach, who was running Feeding Our Future.
you told me not to get into this.
No, I said, look, it's just someone talking, but that's why I'm just saying it at the end here, so people can go look it up, and we'll talk about it if it becomes more than just an accusation. But she's saying that Tim Waltz and the AG Keith Ellison were fully aware of all the systemic fraud, uh, as hundreds of millions of dollars are being stolen from taxpayers. So we've mentioned it a handful of times, this particular news story. This is a new wrinkle in it. We're not going to get into the details. At this point, it's just one person chatting, saying some stuff, but let's keep an eye on it. That's all I'm saying.
And I'm being told by the people in the rants, hit the thumbs up for everybody that's listening to this on Rumble.
That's right.
And
share it.
And if you're on YouTube, share the clips. They're amazing. David's doing amazing work making these clips. Share them, pass them around so they get into other people's algorithms. So everybody go to our YouTube page, The Daily Cheat Sheet, and just share those clips. Substack, amazingly, the clips go do it. My phone sometimes does not stop, and I'm not complaining about it at all. But they absolutely love the clips because they're auto-generated, which makes life so much easier. But they're not always the best clips, but nonetheless, they're not goal-on style clips. Okay.
Yeah. Can I tell one more quick one before we go, or are we out of time? All right, I know the great lie. Miss Rachel.
The show's 52 minutes. That would have been going on for an hour and 15 by movie magic.
Yeah, I'm an editor. What can I say? Miss Rachel, for those of you who don't know who that is, she is this basically childlike grifter who preys on children and hates the Jews and loves terrorists. And I'm saying that I'm not even alleging. It's not allegedly. It's clear that she does. Come after me, prove me wrong. She's got millions and millions of kids that are watching her, and at first she was I'm just talking about the poor children in Gaza, and then eventually she was like, hey, I'm going to showcase these terrorists, these adult terrorists on my kid show, and then she just was caught liking a comment under one of her Instagram posts that said "Free America from the Jews," and she liked it. And then someone on her team sent her a message, hey, we noticed that you it said liked by author, the Free America from the Jews thing. And she was like, oh my God, really? Because I love Jews and I hate anti-Semitism. And then she went on TV and she cried about it. And then a little bit after that, someone else posted, the Jews posted that themselves. And then she responded, ooh, which I'm sure was also just an oopsie. She must have just leaned on the O key.
I like your girl accent.
Yeah, no, she's a real effing idiot. And if you want to watch someone who is a bad actor, go check out Miss Rachel crying on Instagram about how she got caught being a bigot.
It's amazing how many people have built careers in the last 2.5 years on being anti-Israel. It's such an amazing thing how people literally created universes, media empires on Israel hate. And so there we are.
There you go. So
I never even heard of her before this.
Well, I have a 3-year-old, and I figured I had to actually go into the system on Netflix and figure out how to block certain titles from not being displayed, because my son likes Blippi, which to me is just nightmare fuel. But all right, fine. I've watched enough of this to know that there's no actual terrible messages being broadcast. He's just a weird guy. But then she appeared on one of his episodes, and my son was like, she's the one from Blippi. I want to watch her. And I was like, time to figure out how to delete titles. And I was able to. So for those of you who are listening who have kids who want Miss Rachel to not be on your screen so your kids don't click on her, There is a way. Go look it up, ask ChatGPT or look it up online. There is a way to block titles on Netflix. It's important.
Well said. Lastly, reality, as I always say, that I was told by my first drug counselor, is something that does not like to be ignored. That message goes to Steve Witkoff, Tom Barrack, and Jared Kushner. Okay. Reality is something that doesn't like to be ignored. You can't take the Islam out of the Muslim. You just simply cannot. And
that's your quote. My quote is from John Hardy, the director of the Russia program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, who said, Steve Witkoff, nice guy, but a bumbling effing idiot. He should not be doing this alone. So there you go. That's my quote of the day.
On that note, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. And you can find us everywhere at thedailycheatsheet.com. That's thedailycheatsheet.com. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world, wherever you are. God bless you all.